Chapter 17. Preparations. The sun had reached a little further past its halfway point of the day, bringing out the full vibrancy of the turquoise waters and ivory sand of Naho Bay. Jalla stood over a small workbench within the Onokoro shipyard, staring at a freshly unrolled map of the village provided by Turaga Nokama. From the moment the map was presented, he immediately began forming strategies for better defensive measures. Standing on the other side of the workbench with the Turaga was Kai, who, while primarily worked as a sailor, also served as the captain of the Onokoro Guard, which in Jalla's eyes was a testament to how inefficient the Gamatoran militia had been, having seemingly turned their defenses into an afterthought. But despite this, he had battled alongside Kai in the past, and was aware that she was not the main part of the problem. Macku stood beside the Turaga, having been recently reinstated as right hand after the Battle of Kininui, as well as the left hand, Kotu, and a handful of bystanding Gamatoran dock workers that were curious about the gathering. Takua was present as well, maintaining a short distance as to not interfere with the discussion as he documented the meeting.
The beach being the sole access point to the village should already provide us with an advantage,
Jalla said as he tapped his fingers on the table.
It'll act as a choke point. However, we don't know how well the Bohrok swim, but we have to assume that they can. If that's the case, we'll lose the advantage the dock grants us.
Whether they can swim or not,
Kai replied, glancing over at the Turaga and her attendants.
Uninvited guests don't fare too well in Naho Bay anymore.
We'll need some sort of barrier around the village,
Jalla continued.
We don't have the time or resources to construct a full wall, but we need at least something to slow them down.
What about the bamboo forest on the west side of the beach?
Macku suggested.
Could we work with that?
Jalla glanced out toward the beach in the far distance, noting the dense cluster of bamboo that grew in abundance beside it, with many of the trees reaching beyond the height of 5 or 6 matoran by his estimate.
Something like that could work, but we'd likely have to deplete the whole supply just to even have a chance of being effective.
You might be surprised by how fast it grows back,
Kai said.
A month or two, and it'll look like we never touched it. That's partly why we use it so often.
And how big is Onokoro?
Just under 2 square miles,
Macku replied. Jalla glanced back and forth from the map to the bamboo forest, tapping his fingers against the table for only a handful of seconds before landing on a conclusion.
Gather all the guards, as well as any volunteers. Hopefully there's enough hatchets to go around. Let's get to work.
Jalla rolled up the map and handed it to the Turaga before the Gamatoran dispersed from the meeting, preparing for their newly assigned task. Takua closed the Book of Chronicles and slid it into his bag. He looked back up to see Macku had approached him.
It's good to see you again, Takua,
Macku said.
The role of chronicler really seems to be suiting you.
Thanks, Macku,
Takua replied.
Speaking of roles, it looks like you've been reinstated.
Oh yeah, the Turaga had only intended the revocation to be temporary. I was reappointed a few weeks ago. Totally worth it, by the way.
How did Kotu handle filling your spot?
She practically begged the Turaga to take me back. She says she isn't cut out being the right hand.
That sounds like Kapura,
commented Jalla.
Left hands tend to be a bit more eccentric,
Takua said.
The Turaga did that on purpose when they selected us,
Macku replied.
2 contrasting personalities helps provide unique perspectives.
She's right,
said Jalla.
It's no secret that Kapura is different. But while others might write him off as unintelligent at first glance, he's one of our best strategists.
Takua scratched his brainstalk as Jalla and Macku headed off to begin their work.
Huh. Maybe I should have been a left hand.
Mere moments after reaching the bamboo forest with a modest crew of Gamatoran workers, Jalla watched the stream of blue bodies move along the main dock, as what appeared to be every single Gamatoran had volunteered to help prepare the defenses. They poured out from their single-file line off the dock and onto the white sand, many of which already carried their own hatchets in hand, while they immediately put themselves to work. Trees fell by the dozens, while those left without tools were tasked with carrying, stacking, and tying the rapidly accumulating piles along the beach. After overseeing the delegation of work, Jalla found a suitable place amidst a dense cluster of bamboo to begin. Like most Matoran, the captain was no stranger to strenuous and physical labor, although he had little experience cutting down trees, but he quickly adapted to the technique, finding it comparable to hacking off the legs of a fiku nui, something he was all too familiar with. For this reason, he elected to use his sword rather than the hatchet he was provided. With a single clean swing, Jalla cut through the base of another tree before guiding its fall. The downed tree was loaded up and carried away by a passing trio of workers before he had even selected the next one. He glanced around, pleased to see the villagers of Onu-Koro hard at work and preparing for the inevitable invasion. Standing nearby among the host of blue was the only concentration of red and yellow besides himself. Takua was conversing with two Matoran that worked beside him. Although they were mostly out of earshot, Jalla gathered that they were asking him to recount tales of his recent adventures as chronicler. Jalla noticed a shift in his fellow Matoran's body language following their questions. He wasted no time spilling out a series of fascinating and possibly slightly embellished stories to the enamored villagers. Takua's focus on the task at hand had only reset once he realized the captain was watching him, which snapped him back on track, though he continued his accounts between hatchet swings. Jalla thought back to the old Takua that he had grown familiar with over the last century, and how much he differed from the one he saw now. The sight had summoned a smile behind the captain's mask.
Captain?
Called an approaching Matoran in a soft and slightly timid tone.
Yes,
Jalla replied.
Sorry I'm late. I was outside the village when this was announced. Do you need any more help?
yes. We've only just started. We're going to need enough trees to encircle the village.
Okay. I don't have an axe with me, though. I would have come more prepared if I'd known about this sooner.
Jalla pulled out the unused hatchet that hung from the strap of his sword sheath and offered it to the Matoran. She quickly accepted the offer with a nervous smile. Jalla was beginning to turn back toward the next tree when he noticed she followed him.
I'm Hahli.
She said, presenting her open palm toward the captain.
Jalla,
He replied, turning back to accept her handshake. Hahli chuckled nervously.
I know. Everyone knows who you are. You've done a lot for the island.
we all have a duty.
Jalla approached another tree and cut it down in one purposeful motion. Hahli selected one nearby and felled it with no less than 4 swings of her hatchet. Jalla could instantly see she was not overtly proficient in the art of bamboo execution, but he couldn't help but admire her eagerness to assist her village nonetheless. Hahli wore a great cow, which was common among Matoran. Only hers was without the typical visor lens, which allowed her strikingly violet eyes to shine through. Her body was colored in 2 contrasting shades of blue that met at her waist. The top half of her body was reminiscent of a cloudless midday sky, while the lower half resembled a calming dusk.
I've been hearing a lot about these Bohrok,
Hahli said.
but I haven't seen one yet. Are the rumors that they destroy Onu-Koro true?
I'm afraid so.
Jalla replied before cutting down another tree.
We've all seen the smoke from here, but we couldn't believe it. Or maybe we just didn't want to. If they can take out entire villages, then how is a bamboo fence going to protect us?
It's not going to. But it's a start.
I trust your judgment. You've earned that over the years.
I do my best.
Jalla replied after a pause before hacking down the next tree.
What is your rank, Hahli?
My rank?
Hahli asked, confused by his question.
What do you mean?
I assumed you were in the Gakuro Guard.
Me? No, I'm not a guard. I'm just a flax-maker's assistant. What made you think that?
You said you were outside the village. I didn't think you were in the trading guild since trade has been suspended. Thought you must have been patrolling.
Not me. I was just exploring the Hewkii while I had some free time.
By yourself?
Yeah. I've always had the drive to see more of the island. And now that there's a much lower chance of getting eaten, it's hard to resist.
But I can respect wanting to venture out. It's just not something you see very often.
Oh, tell me about it. I can't get my friends to go beyond the beach. I get they're just being cautious. But we've been cooped up in our villages for too long. I want to see it all.
You sound like someone else I know.
Jalla said, glancing back over toward Takua.
The chronicler? Yes. He's seen and done so much and in such little time. It's truly inspiring.
He certainly has sprouted. It's been satisfying to see.
There was something I was meaning to ask you, though. When we first heard about Takua becoming the new chronicler, shortly after his visit to our village, his name sounded so familiar to me. But I couldn't place where from. But I think I figured it out. Was he the one responsible for that lava farming incident in Onu-Koro?
Jalla opened his mouth, but held back the response before it could escape. He stared over at Takua, watching him continue to entertain the Gamatoran with his tales. He turned back to Hahli.
No, that was someone else.
I see. I wonder why his name sounded so familiar then.
Jalla turned toward another tree, cutting it down with another swift motion. With a firm guiding push, it landed in the rapidly growing clearing, where it was quickly collected and taken to the beach. By the time Hahli had chopped through the ones she had selected, Jalla had already removed 2 more.
Hey, can you teach me how to do that?
Hahli asked just as Jalla had begun winding back for another swing. Jalla lowered the blade and turned toward her.
You want me to show you how I cut down a tree?
The way you do it is so much faster and cleaner. I'm afraid I'm doing something wrong. I've never actually done this to anything thicker than a flax plant before.
I'm no expert either. My experience in other fields just seems to be carrying over. With that being said, though, I wouldn't have guessed you're new at this. Your technique isn't half bad, and you seem to be keeping up with everyone else.
How could I settle for not half bad when I could be exceptional?
Jalla shrugged.
Perfect response. Come on, let me show you.
Hahli sprung over next to the captain as he selected another bamboo trunk.
The trick is in the momentum.
Jalla said as he ran his hand along the smooth surface of the tree.
Don't aim for the target. Aim behind it. Imagine it isn't there. And treat the swing as if you were cutting through open air.
That's all there is to it?
No. Other factors, such as blade alignment, are also crucial. But those come with more practice. Go ahead and give it a try.
Okay.
Hahli said under her breath as she assumed her stance. She readied her hatchet, staring intently before giving several practice wind-ups. It was unclear if they were genuine, or if she had simply been stalling due to the pressure of being watched by the captain of the Takura Guard. Following a deep breath, she swung the axe. The blade halted halfway through the base of the tree.
Not bad. You started off strong. Solid form, firm stance, but you backed off once you felt the blade touch the wood.
That was the deepest it's been so far.
Hahli said excitedly.
Keep practicing. You'll have it down before we're finished here.
Within hours, the bamboo forest was fully depleted. The branches were shucked and they were organized into mountainous piles, where they were then transported to the village and driven deep into the seabed surrounding it by Gamatoran divers. Jalla walked the edges of the platforms, observing thoroughly to ensure the spacing was precise and without weak points.
The placement is good,
Jalla reported to Turaga Nokama, who walked beside him.
It's hard to say if we'll have enough trees for a second layer. So they'll need to start at the front of the village in case they can't make another full wraparound,
We may not be as tough or hardy as your guards,
said the Turaga.
but the Gamatoran are no strangers to hard work.
They've done well so far. But it's going to take more than a bamboo fence to stop the Bohrok. When they finally arrive, this is going to buy us seconds at most.
What else do you suggest?
Traps along the beach, barricades on the docks. We'll need as many ships and boats patrolling the entire bay, as well as more foot patrols beyond the beach so they don't get the jump on us. Here in a few minutes, I'll need you to call a village-wide meeting in the square. We'll randomly divide the Matoran into 2 shifts so the work never stops. I won't let another Koro fall.
Thank you again for this, Captain.
I'm just doing my duty, Turaga.
Their conversation was cut short by Kotu, who came sprinting in from the shipyard and skidded to a halt beside them.
Turaga, you're gonna want to see this.
Jalla and the Turaga hurriedly followed Kotu across the village. When they arrived in the shipyard, they found Turaga Onewa being helped out of a rocking canoe by Hewkii. When his feet hit the dock, the Turaga of Onu-Koro stood in place to regain his sense of balance before turning back to the boat in disgust and approaching Nokama.
Onewa,
Nokama greeted.
is everything all right in Kokoro?
I'm afraid not, Nokama.
Onewa replied.
We seem to have a bit of a pest problem back home, and find ourselves in need of a place to stay.
The Bohrok have taken Kokoro?
Not exactly. They destroyed the Tiro Canyon and all the displaced Rahi came our way. And it's bad enough having Nui Jaga as neighbors, let alone roommates.
I'm sorry to hear that. You and your Matoran are always welcome here.
Thank you, Nokama. The whole village is waiting on the other side of the bay. We were hoping you could spare some boats to get us all over here.
Of course, Onewa. I'll arrange a few sailors to pick them up right away.
After the Turaga had finished speaking, Jalla and Hewkii stepped up to one another.
It's good to see you, Captain.
Jalla said with a firm handshake.
Likewise,
Hewkii replied.
although I wish it were a happier occasion.
Has it ever been?
Good point. I wasn't expecting you to be here in Gakoro.
I wasn't either.
He's been helping us with our defenses against the Bohrok.
Said Turaga Nokama.
He's made sure we'll be prepared when they inevitably attack.
Is that the reason for all the bamboo?
Onewa asked.
We had a hard time accessing the dock. Good. That means it works.
Hewkii's eyes trailed away from Jalla when he noticed Macku entering the shipyard. The moment she noticed him, he broke away from the group in a hurried stride toward her. Jalla and the 2 Turaga watched them embrace each other.
Sometimes I wonder if those 2 swallowed some magnets or something.
Turaga Onewa commented.
I've never seen a friendship anything like theirs.
They've always shared a special bond.
Said Nokama.
Maybe the rest of us could learn from it. Come on, Onewa. Let's get your villages transported.